Thanks for joining us for the Mindr event. My name is Nathan Palin, here to segue you in. I think we're going to play one more song before we get started. This is an original song called Wish We All Could Be Together. Wrong direction, tied in a knot, leave without mention, slanted crossbow, all the best. The rest will shake your fears away. Moving target, slowing down. In a half an hour, I'm leaving town. Say goodbye to all the ones that made you comfortable, happy to be on the run. And I wish we all could be together. Nothing you can do can change the weather. Don't forget to take your sweater off. My mind goes in all directions. Finally done with the last attention. Super staring at the stairs, stargazing. Hey, glad to be scared. I'm gonna grab you by the spring.
Sorry, I need to make my, I need to have lunch.
I can see. Hopefully, if it doesn't break, I'll meet you in the middle of the next state. Maybe that's fine, maybe that's good. So give it to the local Robin Hood, cause lately I'm feeling a bit misunderstood. And I wish we all could be together. Nothing you can do can change the weather. Don't forget to take your sweater off. Oh. Guess we're gonna live in different places, brand new eyes and fresh new faces, facing all the things that we talked about and how we're gonna still go on. One more thing before you leave, another happy thought for you to breathe. I'll stand patient, I'll stand true till the next time I get to stand with you. Maybe that's fine, maybe that's good. Give it to the local Robin Hood, cause lately I'm feeling a bit misunderstood. And I wish we all could be together. Nothing you can do can change the weather. Don't forget to take your sweater off. A piece of you will be with me until I die.
Thank you so much, Nate, for
My pleasure.
listening us into this event. We have a very excited fan over here. Thank you, Ella. And everybody, welcome so much to this Mindr event. This is not how we're used to meeting, but we're so grateful to have the chance to meet one way or another and to see you here in this virtual space. Today we're gathering for a panel discussion about taking everything we've learned in this challenging year and moving into 2021 with our best foot forward and our best chance to achieve some sort of work-life success. Before I introduce the panelists to you, a couple of quick housekeeping things to let you know about. Number one, as you can see over here in the moderator seat, our lifelong policy at Mindr is crying babies and kiddos of any age are always, always welcome. This has been a huge pillar of Mindr's activities from day one. We're really passionate about opening up thought leadership opportunities to absolutely everything, and we think kid friendliness is a critical way to do that, even when your kids take you out of the Zoom call like mine just did. Don't touch my computer, please. Another thing is today we're really keen for this to be an interactive discussion, and so there are going to be a few different ways that you can participate. Number one, if at any point you have a question for our panelists, please use the raise hand participants tab to raise your hand and let us know you've got something that you're going to want to ask, and I'll come to you as soon as I can. Another way to participate is by dropping your question in the chat box, which you can do publicly in front of anybody, or anonymously by sending it just to me, and then I'll repeat your question to the panelists. And the third way we have for you to share your thoughts on what makes this year and next year possible is we've circulated some virtual backgrounds where you can share your secret work-life hack that's helped you get through the last few months. They were shared in the email earlier today. They're also going to be dropped in the chat box. So if you want to upload a virtual background that indicates what your secret skill is, we'd love to see them. And it's great to see a few already. We want to encourage everybody on the call to switch on video. We don't care if your background is messy. We don't care if your light is bad. We don't care if your kids are making a ruckus right next to you. Mine is certainly going to be. But we'd love to see you and have you participate in that way. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our illustrious panel of experts who are joining us at today's event. We have with us today Bethanie Baynes, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Google, who is also the founder of Breadwinning Women of Google. We have Rodsky, author of the best-selling book Fair Play, about achieving a fair division of labour within the home, which is a Reese Witherspoon book club pick, and you know, has been taking the world by storm, especially in this challenging year. We have Mindr's very own senior facilitator and workplace mental health lead, Tashia Millstein, who is also a practicing psychotherapist and licensed social worker, and the incredible serial CEO and entrepreneur, John Belizaire, who's currently CEO of Saluna, as well as being the founder of CEO Playbook. And we're going to hear from all of them, but I want to just jump in before we get started with questions for our panelists to introduce themselves to you in their own words. So you can hear a little bit about them, their backgrounds, and how they've been weathering the storm this year. And Bethanie, I'll hand it over to you first if you want to give us an introduction.
Happy to. Hello to the Mindr community. It's so great to be with you again. As Sarah mentioned, yes, I work at Google. I've been there for what feels like a lifetime, almost 17 years. I am the proud mama to a 13-year-old son and an almost 9-year-old daughter. And I'm excited to be here today because I feel like every week is a totally new perspective on the outlook of what's ahead, and just really trying to stay as positive and optimistic as I can, but can certainly resonate with this topic of the panel. And I think I'm very eager to learn from my fellow panelists as well. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Bethanie. And Tashia, coming over to you for an introduction.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I started with Mindr from essentially the very beginning when we first both had our daughters and Sarah started the company. So excited to be part of a community event. I'm a practicing psychotherapist, and before that, I actually worked in corporate America. I was a lawyer for many years, so have some knowledge and background around kind of dealing with some of these issues in that environment. I am the very proud mom of an almost 4-year-old. Her birthday is actually this Saturday on Halloween. And I've been a practicing psychotherapist. I work with you know, adults and couples, and you know, been seeing a lot of the impact of what's been going on this year and a lot of the anxiety and fear about what it's going to look like this fall and winter and in 2021. And I think for me, just really being able to lean on an amazing support group, both with my friends and my family, has really, you know, helped me get through this thus far, and I think will continue to help me as we, you know, continue to deal with this virus and everything else that's going on in the world right now.
Thank you so much, Tashia. I can't wait to hear your strategies. Rodsky, over to you for an introduction.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. And look at all these beautiful women. Thank you for keeping your cameras on. I wrote Fair Play as a love letter to all of you. But what I didn't know at the time of writing it, that it was also going to become a love letter to men. So thank you, John, for being here, because the system's not working for anybody right now. So I want to dedicate this hour to the 865,000 women that were forced out of the workforce in September alone. And to all the other women who are barely hanging on because our society has put the expectation that raising a family and doing all of the housework or the delegation of all those responsibilities on us solely without any community support in a strange structure of a nuclear family that was never meant to exist. So I really appreciate this. I did not expect to become the expert on the gender division of labor. I am just a lawyer and a mediator that came to this topic, as Bethanie knows, because of a text my husband Seth sent me 8 years ago that said, "I'm surprised you didn't get blueberries." And that day on the side of the road led me to a journey 8 years later of really thinking systemically about the empathy and the systems that need to change in our home and how that affects policy And so I'm fighting on all those levels.
I see we have some attendees having a religious experience in the chat box, so it sounds like it's definitely resonating with people what you're saying. John, over to you for an introduction. Oh, John, you might be on mute.
Oh. Thank you so much. This is my first Mindr event, and it's amazing to get to know the Mindr community, so I'm looking forward to this. I am a proud dada of two daughters, a 6-year-old who has now started first grade, and a little baby girl who is going to turn 1 essentially next week. Can't believe it's been a year. And she is technically, I guess, a COVID baby. I think in the first few weeks of the New York City shutdown, I think she thought, you know, her sibling and parents were like the only people on earth, and the rest of the people lived on something called Zoom for a while, until she started seeing more people. And so I have just been enjoying the time being home, because with my role helping to drive more renewable energy in the world through some innovative technology and computing, I travel a lot, sometimes to Northern Africa, to parts of the country, and I've been able to enjoy every day with the girls and help mom really help grow our two beautiful young girls. In fact, today was crazy hair day, and this is what I wore to breakfast, you know, so I participated. You know what I mean? And I normally missed all of those things, so that's the silver lining and everything that's been going on. 2020 has actually been a pretty trying year for me personally, and I'm sure when we get into it, I'll share some of the this year. But I think with through all of this, every one of us will learn something about ourselves and about how resilient we can be in times of challenge. I'm looking forward to sharing today.
Absolutely, and you know, you hit right on something that I want to talk about right as we start, which is to hear about, for each of you panelists, your experience of 2020. You know, this has been a challenging year for everybody. I don't know anyone who hasn't been contending with massive changes in their work life, you know, both on the work front and on the home front. As we were just hearing from Eve, we had 865,000 women leave the workforce in September alone, representing 80% of those who left the workforce in that month. And, you know, the impacts for men have been significant as well, with unprecedented changes to the way in which we work. You know, we know that in 2017 to 18, only 25% of people had ever worked from home, even occasionally, and that's been a big shift for a lot of us. But John, you mentioned challenges and silver linings, and that's really where we wanted to open today with the first question for all of you, which was, looking back at this year, how has the experience been? What have been the higher points and the lower points for you? And you know, I know that's a big question, but at a top line level, and perhaps John, you could go first since you're already touching on that topic.
Yeah, I would say this year has been a real test of my personal resilience, to be honest. The pandemic is something that, you know, none of us expected to happen. It is the ironic thing is I sit on a board of a company that has been projecting a global pandemic for the last 15 years or so. And they have this whole analytic platform for sort of finding where it pops off and where it goes. But when it hit, my wife sort of entered into a very militaristic approach to protecting our family, and she forbade me to get on the subway or take the train. So I started walking to work until eventually the city was shut down. And within a couple of weeks of that, I heard that my mom and two siblings that were living in Brooklyn contracted COVID-19, and my mom, who is going to celebrate her 80th birthday this Saturday, got the brunt of it, and she went through a 45 days of hell, I would say, give or take, at the hospital, trying to fight her way through the effects of the virus. And then my two siblings made their way through at home. Thankfully, they've all fully recovered. And just as my mom was recovering, I lost one of my closest friends, co-founder of several of my companies, and he took his own life. And so I'm sure we're going to talk about the mental health challenges that come with an event like this. It really affected me. I've known this person for, his name is Joe, known him for 20 plus years, and I never saw anything that made me feel that he was going through such a hard time, but clearly he was, and that affected him so much that he didn't want to be here anymore. And it took me a while to sort of come out of that and see if all of these things could be used as a way for me personally to find a positive path going forward. And I've never experienced anything like this, but it has really helped me tremendously to sort of look internally, realize the things that are important to me, and refocus my efforts on what it means to be alive.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Some of my my wardrobe here. Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry for your loss, John, and I thank you on behalf of the whole audience for sharing with us. I know that people are going to get a lot out of hearing from your experience. And Tasha, I suppose that is a good segue to come to you to tell us, personally and professionally, what have you seen this year in terms of challenges and silver linings?
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that I think no one was prepared for. No one ever thought that they're going to live through something like this. And I think that in and of itself really impacted people when you feel like you have a certain level of control, or feel like you have an understanding over your life, and then to have that completely ripped out from under you, no matter how successful or together you may have had it, that is just beyond shocking and really hard for many people to deal with. And I think seeing issues around families, all of a sudden everyone's home, but people have to work, kids aren't in school. Like, how do you deal with that? How do you manage that? But then there's the other side of that, people that live by themselves, or live with roommates who they're not necessarily friends with or have conflict with, people who haven't seen, their parents or family members in what's coming up to almost a year for some people maybe over a year, depending on when the last time they saw them, and the holidays are coming. So what does that mean for people? That's been, I think, a big struggle as we get closer to these holidays. I know for me personally, dealing with just the work-life balance and trying to figure out, how do I work and show up for my clients, but also how do I deal with the reality of what's happening.
Really close friends with Tom Snyder.
So, I guess the silver lining is that I probably haven't spent this much time with my husband in a really long time, but also, with my daughter. And I think that was really great. But then, the flip side again is she wasn't in school, and she really missed that. So how do I comfort her, right? Showing up for her and being really understanding with, behavioral issues that might suddenly come up, and understanding that she, even though she's really young, she's also dealing with her life, that was suddenly ripped out from, under her. So I think that's been something that we've been trying to be very intentional about, and recognizing that it's not just the grownups that are having a hard time, but it's also the kids, and it's not just the grownups that are sacrificing, but it's our children as well. And just thinking about, what these past few months have looked like, I feel very lucky and privileged to have had a support network that I could lean on. We ended up moving in with my in-laws, which I will honestly say, never thought I was ever going to do in my life. But we had to be able to get support and to be able to do work. And I recognize that was a benefit that I was able to lean on. But that also came with its own challenges. In some ways, I think there was some conflict, but at the same time, we were able to bridge the gap and come together and realize that these are the things that we have to do to make it work. And, a lot of acceptance. And I think for many of us to be able to get through this is to accept that it's no longer going to be normal. I think people are struggling in part because they're clinging to this idea that we're going to go back to what it looked like before COVID-19 happened. And I think we have to have some level of acceptance that that may not happen. The future is going to look different. That's not necessarily bad, but being able to be intentional about that, right? We have an opportunity to essentially reshape what 2021 is going to look like. And we should really, take control of that, not just let it happen to us. Like, it feels like we don't have control, but if we were to step back and reflect on the things that are going on in our life, there are things that we can control. And being able to do that gives us our power back. It gives us our, autonomy back. And I think that's what a lot of us have felt that we have lost. And I'll stop there for now because I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to answer the question. I can go on forever.
Thank you, Tasha. I feel like I could listen to you forever. Eve, this question of how we divide labor at home, both previously in the so-called old normal, and now as we reshape what the rest of this year and what next year will look like. This has been a significant topic of your work, both in Fair Play and beyond. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about your perspective on 2020's challenges and silver linings.
Well, I think the beauty is that the invisible is now literally visible on Zoom, right? We're all the BBC father. But I think what Tasha said was really important. I think what a lot of what I talk about is the opposite of hopelessness is action. We are at that cross in the road right now. I was just listening to this beautiful spoken word poet before this that was on a board meeting, and he had this gorgeous spoken word that said, if we do everything right, we won't go back to normal. I think that's what we're seeing with the racial justice movement, the social justice movement, and the gender justice movement. So what brought me to this moment, what I want to tell everybody here is that this is not new. I got this message on DM from a woman who said, can someone please explain how to homeschool the kids, take care of all the meals, and also work full time from home and still be productive and responsive, right? That's actually not possible. And a lot of it is because of a problem that's been around for 100 years. And I think about this breast cancer march that I was on 8 years ago when I started to learn about the gender division of labor, because I was marching with all these beautiful women that look like you here. Marching's in my blood. My mom never gave me birthday gifts. She just said, I'll give you a Greyhound bus ticket to DC. But we were marching this day. I remember we were all in pink. We had signs like courage, strength, and power, not just a female problem. It was this beautiful girlfriend's getaway day. And it was a Saturday morning. And I remember this distinctly, that at 12, and I write about this, at noon, it was like a reverse Cinderella. All these powerful women, beautiful faces like yours, the women I was marching with that day to honor my friend who had died of breast cancer, their phones started blowing up, reverse Cinderella, from our partners with things like, when are you coming home from the parade? That was my friend Kate's husband, who basically was saying that he was done watching his children at noon. And then all of our phones started blowing up with things like, where did you put Hudson's soccer bag? What's the address of the birthday party? You didn't leave me a gift. My favorite was my friend Christy's husband, and his text said, do the kids need to eat lunch? And so what I remember about that day very distinctly was that I made a dim sum reservation for my 10 friends, and all of these powerful women, the head of stroke and trauma at Cedars-Sinai, an award-winning Oscar producer, so many amazing lawyers like Tasha, who has 1,000 degrees behind your name. They looked at me and said, maybe we left our partners with too much to do. And then they left. They left to go find the soccer bag, to go perfectly wrapped gift to a birthday party, and to feed their kids lunch. And so I had an act of resistance that day. I counted up all of the phone calls and texts we received. There was 30 phone calls and 46 texts for 10 women over 30 minutes. And that day really reminds me of now, where the statistic is that women are being interrupted every 3 minutes and 42 seconds. And that is unacceptable. It is not a place for mental health. We can never get into our flow. We do not believe we have a permission to be unavailable. We are stuck in our roles. And so after that day, I started to realize that this is not a private life issue. This is not about us fighting over who's taking out the garbage or a sponge at the sink. This is a systemic issue, and that's the silver lining. The silver lining is we don't want to go back to normal. Who wants back to normal? We want a new future, right? Where we can value an hour holding our child's hand at the pediatrician's office, value that as much as an hour in the boardroom. And so I think it requires all of us, though, to reframe how we look at care and to recognize that having it all does not mean doing it all. And I had to really unpack that for myself on my journey. It is not in our mental health to believe that having it all means doing it all. It is physically not possible.
I hear you on that for sure. And Bethany, as I come to you for your reflections, I wonder if you can expand for us on this idea of, having it all not being possible, when so many of the people in the Mindr community are balancing significant ambitions and obligations, whether they work full-time inside the home or whether they work full-time outside the home. Certainly at Google, I know in your senior role, you're no stranger to significant work pressure. And I wonder, as you've navigated 2020 and look to 2021, how have you managed to deal with the fact that having it all and doing it all is not possible, even when you might feel that you're expected to?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I love all the insights from all of the other panelists. It reminds me of this quote that I heard at the beginning of this pandemic, where we're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats, right? So everyone's household looks a little bit different. Everyone's struggles look a little bit different. This pandemic has impacted so many of us in, very, very personal ways, or, just regular life happening on top of pandemic. And so when we talk about this idea of getting back to normal, I remember after I had my son 13 years ago, I spent that first year postpartum trying to get back to normal, right? Trying to feel like myself again. And it's almost that same feeling again now. And I think what I've been coming to in terms of this idea of kind of having,
why we should get a dog? Because on Halloween they can
Get him
get
a
a
dog.
dog. That's so cute, huh? I love that.
this idea of, like, we all have limitations, right? We all have 24 hours in the day. And, I've come back to this phrase time and time again, that I can only control what I can control, right? So I have a tremendous amount of anxiety heading into next week. I can't really control the outcome. I can control what I do about it. I can control how I feel about it, but I can't control much of the outcome. And so really kind of trying to frame my mind in those ways of what I can do that feels like I'm in control. But I also think what's so critical in this concept of doing it all is just setting your own boundaries. And obviously Eve can certainly talk about sharing that with your partner, but I think when it comes to work, when it comes to self-care, when it comes to being with your children, you need to set boundaries. And it's a super valuable lesson to showcase to your kids and to your bosses that you have limits. And we all do. And so I've learned an uncomfortable lesson that no is a complete sentence. There are things that I may want to do that I cannot do, and I have to say no, and then just move on. And I got a very great tip during a professional coaching session, which I'll share. And it was this idea of this constant influx of ideas, opportunities, projects, calls, connections coming at you. And that we all have to decide what you can say yes to and what you can say no to. And once you start making those decisions, you put it in the yes bucket, you put it in the no bucket, you don't revisit it, right? You've now controlled which bucket that goes into in your life, and you move forward. And so, yes, you can do, crazy hair day with your daughter at school. No, you can't do a 7 a.m. board meeting because you're doing crazy hair day with your daughter. And then the next day it might be a switch, right? But you kind of regain that control of what you're able to do with your time. And I think you really have to prioritize. I see somebody put in the chat this concept of what are the 3 big things that I want to get done this week, this month, today, right? So what are the 3 things I know I need to knock out? And then another thing, I love to do laundry. And I really love folding laundry because it gives me such a sense of accomplishment. It's something I know I can do. It's something I know I can complete. And I know I'm really, really good at it. And that is, I will tell you, between calls, I'm like, I'm going to go do laundry. And because I know that I will get that kind of rush of completion and that rush of accomplishment. So I challenge you all to kind of find that one little thing that you know you can do well, and it gives you that little boost, and find ways to weave that into your day, because it really does help keep you motivated.
Thank you so much, Bethany. I mean, so many strategies already there to unpack. We've had a great anonymous question come in through the chat. And just as a reminder, if anyone has questions for our panelists, you can shoot them through either to everybody or just privately to me. So one of the anonymous ones that have come through to me says, question for Eve. Eve, you pivoted, i.e. busted out of Big Law to go to JP Morgan and then moved on to found your own shop before becoming an author, all incredibly demanding but in different ways. How did you manage the mental elements of these transitions and the stress that comes with the unknown?
That's a great question. Part of it was looking internally into my own home. I blame myself. I was at a terrible point in my life, like I told you about the day I had the "I'm surprised you didn't get blueberries" text, where I thought I was going to untame that shit or eat, pray, love it and leave my marriage, because that was the only other empowerment message I heard, that you have to blow up your life to get domestic equity. Or like some of my most empowered friends who were divorced, they got at least one day a week or weekends or every other week where they got to be in their flow and their zone. That was the only choice I saw in front of me when my life was sort of falling apart 8 years ago. But that's why I think, as Tasha said, you know, some of these times of really deep growth and difficulty can lead to prioritization and existential growth. And that's what was happening to me. So what I will say to that is, I left the traditional workforce and I regret it. So anybody here who's hanging on, I would say hang on. Because the thing is, I was looking at things through a time lens that's fundamentally wrong. And I want to get to solutions, but I think one core finding of fair play that I think is very important, and some of you have heard me say this before, is the notion that all time is created equal. That, and John, thank you for letting me express some of my female anger, because the solutions in fair play, I promise you, are very male friendly, especially for naval pilots who love systems. Those are my friends who I go on the road with a lot. But what a core finding of fair play was that the home is very dangerous, because we've been taught not to talk about it. We've been talked into shame that it's our personal lives. And what that means is that we think we're divorcing over the sponge in the sink, or in my case, over being the fulfiller of my husband's smoothie needs. But really what this is a larger systemic issue around how we view men and women's time. Society views men's time as diamonds, and we view women's time as infinite, as sand, like that old soap opera, Days of Our Lives, where our time is just flying through it. Our time is not infinite. But the problem is, we know that in the workplace, right? If you're a woman of color, you're getting 50 cents on the dollar for every non-Hispanic white man's dollar. So we know we don't value women's time, especially if you're a woman of color. But in the home, I was so surprised by how women were devaluing their own time. When I asked so many women, why are you holding all of the cards for your family, right? And this is the physicalization that came out today of sort of the housework and childcare of your home. Why? Why are you holding all 100 cards, all the way from birth control to a new job, to laundry, to dishes, to holiday cards, to birthday celebrations, to tidying and organizing, to storage, to memories and photos, right? It goes on and on. And so many women said it's because their husband made more money than them, or their job was more flexible. Well, that would mean that because I chose philanthropy, that my husband chose private equity, that I'd be relegated to all the invisible work forever. Women don't make the same money as men, so that's a terrible argument. But the other two that were really insidious, and if you've said this to yourself, we can unpack it, is that I'm a better multitasker. My superpower is that I can do it all, like we said earlier. No, we're not better multitaskers than men. Actually, John, you guys have better executive function than we do. And we know that because you run all the companies in the world. But what this one neuroscientist said to me was so impactful. He said, imagine, Eve, that we men could convince you women that you're better at wiping asses and doing dishes. Not only will you do it and you'll do it happily, but it's great for my tenure and my leisure time and my mental health. So I had to unpack that for myself. And finally, if we've ever said in the time it takes to tell him, her, they what to do, I might as well do it myself. That is also a terrible economics argument for women. It's what pushed me out of the workforce. I was dying under the invisible load of it all, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I was prioritizing my husband's career. And so Dan Ariely, my good friend and behavioral economist, says you never want to say in the time it takes me to tell him what to do, I should do it myself. That means that you are devaluing all your future time. It's a terrible economics argument. Also saying, well, my salary is childcare. No, it's half your salary and half your partner's salary. It always makes sense to keep that power. So the challenge I had was getting and unpacking my own, what I call these toxic time messages for why I was devaluing my time. Once Seth and I realized that all time is created equal, I just get 24 hours in a day, just like he does, regardless of how much money I make, we started to move towards a place of domestic rebalance. And that's really the only place that I could have been in order to do what I'm doing now. Because we're twice as likely to give chores and housework to our children than we are to our partners. If we are the privileged to have them, we need to invite our partners into our home as our co-CEO and not as a helper where we keep the mental load and we have to remind someone to do something. And so I will say that that's a long answer to say all time is diamonds, and nothing we can tell you here today is going to work unless you start valuing your own time as diamonds, and that you don't guard your partner's time is more important than your own.
All time is diamonds, I think, is such a critical soundbite to take away from here today. So thank you, Eve. We've got a related anonymous question that has come through the chat, which says, you might get to this, but I would love some tips for how to start setting boundaries with both family and work without sounding like a dictator. Tasha, I'm going to come to you first, and then John. Tasha, if you and I have worked together at Mindr on this question a lot of supporting people throughout the workforce to set the boundaries that they need in order to succeed and in order to perform and be as productive as possible for their organization and also in achieving their own personal objectives and goals. What tangible strategies have you been advising people in terms of setting the boundaries that they need in order to achieve that work-life success?
I would say first and foremost, know your boundaries. I think a lot of people talk about boundaries as this sort of, amorphous concept, right? But actually spend time in thinking about what are the boundaries that actually work for you, right? The boundaries are personal. There is no one set of boundaries that's going to work for everyone, right? There might be a time of day that works better for you to work and another time when you have to focus on either yourself or your family. So really be reflective on that and understand what your boundaries are. And I think a lot of people feel that they have to say their boundaries in a very autocratic way. You cannot call me after 9 p.m. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, just don't answer the phone after 9 p.m., right? I mean, you have to start modeling what your boundaries are. I think that is probably even more important than actually telling people what these rules are. I think people get afraid when they start thinking about it in the sense of well, I'm going to send my boss a list of rules, or I'm going to send my partner a list of rules. Live your life with your boundaries. And for the most part, people will follow. And then there may be circumstances where people in your life aren't following. You may have to have a more in-depth conversation, depending on who they are, about why they can't respect your boundaries. I think that can be an extremely important conversation that we can have, particularly, in the home and within our personal life, about not being able to follow others' boundaries. But I think it's also important in the workplace, right? And obviously you might have to do it a little bit differently, right? Maybe it's talking to, your direct supervisor who can give you advice on how to talk to, his or her supervisor. But I think we really have to get it out there. And for people who are in positions of power, it's important for you to also model what it looks like to have boundaries. If you know that there are people on your team that have families, and family doesn't just include people who are married and have children. Everyone has a family. Everyone has responsibilities outside of the workplace. And if you know that there's, you know, extenuating circumstances, or you notice that, you know, either one person or multiple people on your team tend to have issues around 5 p.m. meetings or 8:30 a.m. meetings, try to structure it a different way, right? We, especially now, like, we have this opportunity where we're not confined to this concept of 9 to 5 in the office. We can be more flexible. And if you have the ability to lead in that way, I think it's really important to take that opportunity. But yeah, I think really just being very intentional, being very clear, but also, you know, making sure that you protect your boundaries and show people what that means. And people generally, I have found, have been overly, overall, like, respectful of that. But they're only going to respect it if you do it for yourself.
That's so true. And Tasha, I don't know if you can see the group chat while you're talking, but Amy Cow says, Tasha, I will buy your book or listen to your podcast or watch your television show. And there are many, many plus ones that are raining down. So everybody's
the podcast or a show, please let me know.
Exactly. Stand by for Tasha's 2021 podcast. John, I want to come to you with a slightly different angle on this same topic. Something that you and I have talked about in the past is mentorship and the role of mentorship in giving us more leeway in the ability to set our boundaries and also to go after the objectives that we have, both career-wise and at home. I wonder if you could talk to me a little bit about the role of mentorship in navigating this strange 2020 time and thinking about 2021.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I've just been enjoying this conversation. A lot of what's been covered here, you know, my wife and I talk about a lot, you know, because I've been an entrepreneur for the better part of 20 years, and many times it's hard to turn off when you get home, because, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, you understand how the world is just sort of, you know, blend in together. You know, there's no sort of 9 to 5 in that world. So trying to, you know, model how to set boundaries becomes challenging, especially since there's always something to do. And as it relates to mentorship, I think that for young professionals, mentorship is really important. Traditionally, it's been viewed as a way to model and understand where you're going. So model a path. I want to be like that senior person, or I'd like to reach that level in my career. You know, there was an exercise I did probably about 25 years ago. I was in this management training sort of executive MBA program, and they had a psychologist that was there in this particular cohort, and the psychologist's role was to just watch the room, and then they would grab someone from the group and have them watch the room, just to see the interactions and how people were viewing and interacting with people, so they can understand how important people's perception of the world is. And for young professionals, the perception of the world is really driven by sort of the heights that they can achieve and where they're going to go, and how do they learn to get to those places. But I've been a big advocate that career pathways aren't sort of a one-way direction. They're more of a mosaic of experiences. So you're going to, you know, have lots of experiences in your life, lots of roles. And at some point in your life, you're going to step back, and among all of those experiences will create this beautiful picture of sort of who you really are and who you've become. And what's fascinating is that the world is changing so quickly that these senior professionals actually need mentoring from the younger professionals, you know, and coming into the office doesn't have to be sort of this, you know, singular view of the world of work. You know, people should be able to work from home and work from anywhere. For the past 15 years, I've had teams that are completely distributed. Even now, I have a team that's pretty much distributed all over the world. One of our team members had a baby boy this morning. I don't know why he was on the stand-up, but he was on the stand-up. In his Zoom video, you could see was a hospital bed where he was awaiting his wife, you know, delivering the baby. And no, his wife was not in the room with him. But my point is that we work in any way that is flexible and comfortable for that professional. And I think the role of mentoring is that the younger folks who are coming into these environments can really teach some of the more senior executives about how the world really works now. There's so much technology and expectations on how people can communicate and collaborate. that there are different perspectives on how organizations should run. And I think the more senior executives should listen. And I try to learn as much as possible from the young folks that join our teams as well.
Thank you so much for that insight. And I love this idea that mentorship doesn't have to be a one-way street, much like careers are not linear. You know, we learn, we have teachers all the way around an organization. I think that's very powerful. Bethanie, I want to come to you. You, as the founder of Breadwinning Women of Google, have done a lot to elevate the voices of single parents at Google. And we have a question on the anonymous chat that has come in that's relevant to that work. The questioner asks, as a single mum, I find it a blessing and a curse to be at home working. How would you approach, oh, someone else has just written this, I've lost it. How would you approach work-life balance with the fear that I need to be overly productive and overly available versus just doing my job and getting by due to job security fears? So Bethanie, over to you.
Yeah, I think, you know, look, being a single parent, there's no easy way. You can't split yourself in two yet. Maybe the AI world is working on that, but right now it is all, you're holding that entire deck of Eve's cards. And I think, you know, one thing that we had talked about that Tasha had touched on in terms of setting those boundaries, you may have to do it in a more nuanced way at work. And you know, I've earned myself the nickname of the Velvet Hammer because I'm all about very like direct communication, but you can always say it from a place of sincerity and empathy and compassion, right? And so, you know, one thing that I'll do to kind of manage my life is there are calls that I will take without my video on. And that's one of those weird expectations that we now have as you go into this Zoom life and what John was talking about, kind of the old way of working versus where we're heading in the new way of working. And sometimes it's because I'm, you know, going to pick somebody up from gymnastics or going to grab takeout food for dinner. Sometimes it's because I need to take a walk around the block because I haven't moved my body all today. And sometimes it's because my hair is frizzy because I just squeezed in a workout and I'm frying an egg while talking on the phone, right? It's a variety of reasons. And the point is, it shouldn't matter. This is my privacy. I'm still doing my job. I'm still showing up. But right now, I need you to not see everything that's going on in my life and in my home. So I think that's a very valuable thing to just express in a time where you're not feeling like your back is up against a wall, right? So maybe in that one-on-one with your manager, you're saying, you know, just by the way, moving forward, I'm going to see if every day I can take a couple calls just on the phone so I can still get my work done, but also attend to some of the things that I have to take care of. Everyone can relate to the fact that we're juggling it all inside the home right now. But I do think as a single parent, the challenges are significant. And depending on the age of your child, there is no way to make remote school easy. I don't care how old your kid is. If your kid is a teenager, then they're probably not doing the work. If they're 8, then they're completely frustrated that they're not in school with their friends. If they're 5, I don't know how we can expect them to sit in front of a computer all day. So this is something where I talk about kind of we're all in the same storm space. Like there is a universal fact. There's not yet universal understanding, but there's a universal fact that our children are not going to school in any sort of regularity. And if they are, there is a universal angst that is going to go away very soon. So there is something to be said about the challenges that we're all facing, whether or not your children are able to be in daycare, you still have to get to their pickup. And so you just have to be really communicative with what you're able to do and find the places where you can cut yourself some slack.
Cutting ourselves slack, I think, has to be the new motto going into the end of this year, because it's certainly something none of us have been doing enough of. You know, you were talking there, Bethanie, really powerfully about the pressures of navigating this time with kids. Another area where we're hearing a lot of people facing a lot of pressures for those who are going through this pandemic without kids and perhaps without a partner, being at home, you know, in considerable isolation. And so both of those experiences, you know, wherever you fall on the spectrum of have your home setup. And it was wonderful to see so many people sharing their setup on the chat earlier. Wherever you fall on that spectrum, this is a challenging time. And I wonder if I could come to you, Tasha, for some actionable strategies, you know, as we look forward to 2021 for setting a really positive framework. So acknowledging that no matter which way we have it right now, it's pretty much universally kind of awful. How do we turn that around to the best extent that we can to set a really positive foundation for mental health and well-being as we embark into 2021?
Yeah, great question. I would say first and foremost, have a plan. Again, this is about taking control, right? We know at this point that the fall, winter, probably even the spring, we're still going to be in some version of this, right? So think about what are the things that worked for you thus far? What are the things that haven't? What are the things you want to change for the future, right? And for me, one of the biggest things is like, I felt like, okay, I have to have a plan in place if my daughter stops going to school, right? I also have to have a plan in place for socialization for myself, right? Like, who am I going to hang out with? What does that look like? Is it only going to be on Zoom? Can I create my own personal pod where I feel comfortable going to someone's house or having them come to my house? So I think that is something that as we move towards 2021 is taking back control of what's happening to us and setting realistic planning. I think having very, actually, no, this is another one that I think is really important, sorry, is judgment. Let's get rid of judgment. I think partly because no one knows the right thing to do, we're not getting that level of guidance that, you know, everyone's sort of making the decisions about how they're going to deal with COVID-19 for themselves and their family, and it's not going to look the same. And I think there was a point in time during this where just judgment was just flying around. It's like, well, why is your kid at the playground? There's a pandemic going on. Why aren't you, you know, why are you willing to go sit in a restaurant? That's crazy. Or even, I can't believe you're not willing to come to my birthday party just because there's a pandemic. I mean, everyone is dealing with this in their own way. And I know for me personally, in the beginning, I felt like, oh my God, like I need to like talk to my friends who are doing things that I thought were crazy and educate them about the pandemic and what they should be doing right and blah, 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 blah. And then I realized not only was that causing a lot of conflict and stress between myself and others, but I'm not an expert, right? That's not my area of expertise. I have my views on which experts I'm willing to listen to. I have my views on how I feel, you know, where I feel comfortable, maybe being a little bit more relaxed about things. And I have certain areas where I feel very, you know, strict, like, oh no, that is just not going to happen for my family. And someone else might look at all of my rules and think, that makes no sense, Tasha, like, that's not right. And I think what we have to recognize that everyone is honestly trying to do their best for themselves, for their family, for their community, and to respect that. And if there's ever a time when I feel like, you know, someone, let's say, invites me to something or tells me about something, and I think, you know what, that isn't right for me, I have completely given up this idea that I'm going to convince them why it's not right for me. It's just not right for me. It could be right for you, but it's not right for me. So this is my decision. This is what I'm going to do. I respect your decision. And unfortunately, we're just not going to be able to do whatever it is together right now. You know, I hope we can one day. And so I think getting rid of that judgment, I think really will help people as they enter into 2021 and recognizing that whatever decision you make is the right decision for you and your family. And there's no need for you to have to defend it, explain it. I think will really help us. I also think about this idea of like creating, you know, a support network. Think about what works for you. For some people, being on Zoom has been great. They're hanging out with friends across the country, across the world, and they don't mind it. They feel connected. For other people, it's been horrible. They feel very disconnected no matter how many Zoom invitations they may be getting, right? It's not the right place for them. It's not the right setting. So then what does that mean for them going into 2021, right? Are there people in their lives that they can reach out to and plan from the beginning? Okay, this is what, you know, this is going to look like for us. This is what we're all comfortable with, so that occasionally we can get together. So I think those are some of the things that, you know, I'm thinking about as I'm going towards 2021 and thinking about, you know, essentially what happens if we have another quarantine, another lockdown.
Absolutely. And I see John agreeing vehemently in the chat. John, you had said, I would say personal habits that are all about you, design these and put them in place ASAP. Things can overwhelm you very easily. Do you want to expand on the thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's, if I rewind our movie, when we had the lockdown the first time, and, we had to get our kids on Zoom, and there was all these activities, and we had to help them with their assignments. And at some point, we would we put the kids to sleep, and we found ourselves like cracking open bottles of wine and having a couple of glasses. Next day, having half a bottle, the whole bottle, and then we're like, oh my God, what is going on? And there's one point I told my wife Nilda, I said, you have to understand, we can't beat ourselves up because we're not qualified. We're not teachers. We're parents. We don't know how to do these assignments, and not get frustrated when our daughter doesn't want to add 2 numbers and she'd rather go like watch one of her shows or something like that. And so I think it's so important to remember that there's going to be environments and situations that you're going to get put into that will very quickly overwhelm you. You won't know how to deal with having your kids back home because you've been enjoying not having them home because maybe they've gone back to school or are in a better program now, and it's going to be challenging if one of your team members gets sick again, and it just sort of reminds you of this past experiences. So what I was putting in chat was to say something that I found to work for me and for my family is to start creating essentially habits for yourself. They have to be very simple. I think Bethany was making the point, something very simple you can do in 10 minutes. Like my workout regime right now is, I'm just happy if I can get 10 minutes of a workout once a day, whatever it is. I go, I take the step stool, I step up on it and down like 10, enough times to fill 10 minutes. But my habits, for example, is in the morning, around 8:30 or something like that. After breakfast, I journal. I do rose, thorn, bud. What am I happy for about what happened yesterday? What am I feel fortunate about? That's the rose. The thorn is what's not so great and what was challenging that previous day. And the bud is what do I look forward to today, and what do I look forward to, and what new opportunities have presented themselves. I find that process very therapeutic, and it kind of allows me to regain perspective. I talked about the 10-minute workout that I try to get in as much as possible, and I take a walk at least once a day, and I just maybe I'll put a pot on, or I'll listen to some music and just walk a few blocks. Sometimes I literally just walk around the block and it's just me time. And I try to encourage my wife to do the same thing she's doing, but it's so important to just have you time, because you will feel like you've lost that part of yourself and that ability to be with yourself, be with your own thoughts and be present, because this pandemic and everything that comes with it, you're right, the judgment, people saying, you should be at this party and it's going to be fine, you can come over, but nobody's sick over here. That's what they always say. And next thing you know, somebody's sick, but anyway, the most important thing is that you have time every day just for you, so that you can deal with your emotions, deal with your energy levels, and just experience how you're feeling right now, and just enjoy the fact that you're doing something just for yourself for a change. And I think a lot of the mothers on the call can understand what I'm saying, that sometimes you feel like you're doing everything for everyone else all the time, and you really have lost the opportunity to do anything for yourself. So just committing and sort of protecting that time every day, literally, even if it's 10 minutes, to do something that's just about you, nobody else, and that's it. So I highly recommend that.
I'm just going to jump in real quick and just say, on what John is talking about, if you're someone who's into using calendars, put it on your calendar, right? If you share a calendar, put it on there. It's a hold. Because I think it's very easy for us someone will send an email or a text and say, are you available at this time? And you'll be like, yeah, I am. And then you're like, oh, wait, that was supposed to be the half an hour I was saving for myself. Put it in there, make sure that you are like protecting it. And if, you know, within your family, if you feel comfortable, like, you know, talking about like timing, you know, talk to your partner, talk to, you know, whoever you live with, your roommates, whatever, and say, okay, this is my time. Right. And I really appreciate it if you'd like respect that. And I'm happy to work with you to make sure you have time as well. But be, you know, be really like vocal about it. And really, I'm a big supporter of people putting it on their calendars, because it's also just a reminder to yourself and to others that that time's protected.
Thank you so much. And I think everybody will agree with me that we could stay here for the rest of the day and still only hit the tip of the iceberg in terms of all there is to discuss. As we wrap up the event today, Ellie from the Mindr team is going to drop a very short survey in the chat box. We would be eternally grateful if you would all take the 1 minute to jump in there and leave your feedback. You know, we are figuring back out what community events look like in this space, and so the more we know about how to serve you, the better. I want to thank our incredible panelists for sharing so openly and so generously with us today. Truly, I mean, I want to expand this into a series so we can have an hour with each of you. I have so many more questions to ask, and there are more questions yet even coming through the chat that we unfortunately won't have time to get to, but I think that's a testament to how much everybody is really hearing and appreciating and valuing everything you have to say. To the Mindr community, it is wonderful to see you here, whether you're coming back for the 100th time or whether this is the first time you've engaged with us. We value each and every one of you, and we're so grateful for your time and your camaraderie and for this community. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Please take a moment to fill out the survey, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, everybody.